Today we're releasing another game, My Virtual Friend. This is not a video aimed at like advertising it. It's kind of a bad game. I don't know. Basically, I listened to your guys' advice and just made a game that I want to make. So it's a desktop pad, but it's a better desktop pad because it does some more cool stuff. That's the pitch basically. The problem is it's super unmarketable. Like, how do you market that? You don't. Good luck. And even though the game is quality and is polished and it's something that I'm proud of, in my heart of hearts, I'm recording this a few days before release, I don't think it's going to go amazing. We have like over 1,000 wishlists, which is fine, but I don't think it's going to be a massive success, and that's fine. I knew this from the beginning, honestly. That's why we only spent like a month of dev time on it, and even then it wasn't like super dedicated hardcore dev time, but it made me realize that I'm not alone in this feeling. It's something that you guys probably have as well, where you're coming up to those final few days before your game launches, and you kind of know it's not gonna go well because you have 300 wish lists, and it's like, yeah, there's not going to be a miracle when this releases. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what do you do when you know that the time and effort you put into something is probably not going to pay off. You're probably not going to get $50,000 or however much you had originally hoped for when you set up with your game idea and your game design document, you made your prototypes or whatever. You expected more. But turns out for a variety of reasons, maybe that didn't happen. And I think to put this video into context, one thing you need to realize is first, okay, how are you feeling? Because there's a lot of difference in the suck factor, so to say, for this feeling, whether you spent 5 years working on this game or you spent 1 month working on this game versus your like entire company's future, and like the fact that you can live, yes or no, is at stake. Like you were betting everything big on that one game and it was gonna pay off even if it was just $20,000 or whatever to keep you going for another year. Or it's something that, hey, this was a pet project, you still have a full-time job, you still have all of that. It's like, yeah, it sucks that this game isn't going to perform super well, but I can deal with it. Or maybe also something else is like, hey, you're just sick and tired. You like know that, hey, look, I have 300 wishlists, but I really couldn't be bothered anymore to spend more time on this game. I am so done with this. I spent 2 years on it. It's a garbage idea that doesn't make sense to keep working on this. It's also kind of what we have with My Virtual Friend. It's like, no matter how much more time we would spend on it, it's just too unmarketable, I would say, for the most part, at least in the traditional ways that I know of, like influencer marketing, to actually go out and sell it even if we spend more months on development of it. So we're in those final few days before launch. There's a few things that I really urge you to still do. If you haven't done so yet, really suck it up and just do a marketing push. If you have a game, send emails. I've made a bunch of videos about how to send emails to content creators. It may be too late now already. Usually you want to send them about 2 weeks in advance. But even if it's like too late to get the wishlist before launch, you can still get conversion sometimes from content creators covering the game post-release. Like there's less interest for them, so to say, in covering the game after it's out because it's not new anymore. But it's still, you want to throw those Hail Mary shots. So do something like that, send out 100 emails to content creators. Yeah, it's gonna suck for 2-3 hours, but this is probably one of the best things you can still do last minute. Like there's other ways as well to do promo stuff, like for example, posting on Reddit and on XD Everything App and all of that. I think those are, depending on the genre, but I don't think those are as great. But I think at the end of the day, you need to realize that there is a very big chance that this is going to be too little too late. If you're only like scrambling to do the marketing the last 3-4 days of your game, probably it's not just the fact as well that you didn't do marketing before, but there may be bigger issues, like for example, the game is a pretty shitty graphics 2D pixel art game that doesn't really stand out, that doesn't really have a lot of interest in it, and is just inherently more unmarketable than like a beautiful high poly 3D stylized game. Marketing, sending that email push, if you had done nothing before, do it now, do it as fast as you can. This is still going to be the one, like we had this with Unicycle Pizza Time especially, where we only really had a finished build of the game 3 days before launch, which is when we send out all of those emails, and I think we only got one person to cover it before launch, but we still had a lot of people cover it like the first few days after launch, and that kind of still saved it for us. So do still go through those motions. Some other like small things that I would suggest doing as well is like making sure that you've done everything you can for like your Steam setup, basically. Like, is your store page the nice, pretty final version of the game? Is it going to be something that, because once your game releases, you're going to get some free traffic from the discovery queue. Is your Steam page good? Are your screenshots up to date and all of that? Something that I highly urge you to do as well is set up a launch discount, even if it's just 10%, because the moment people see that green box that the game is on discount, they're gonna be like, ooh, I like this, monkey brain engaged. Those are really powerful things as well that can still do a lot in making sure that you have a solid launch for your game. And other things like, you know, your store page I already said, but things like, hey, making a launch trailer if you can, because just record a lot of gameplay and then throw together a new trailer. Those are things that you can still do. Probably adding new features to your game at this point, the last week before release, it's not gonna matter anymore. I think just setting everything up that the game in the current state that it is has the best fighting chance once you actually push that release button is going to be more important. And one final thing that I urge you as well, and maybe this is controversial for some people, but it is still finding 10 people who can review your game basically on launch. This is so powerful still to, once again, give yourself a fighting chance. I say this as well often, like there can often be a return on investment. There usually is by just paying for the game, basically, like going to 10 people you know that have a Steam account, giving them $10 each and be like, buy this game on your account, do not gift it, buy it on your own account and leave me a review the moment that the game comes out. This is something that some people look down upon, but realistically, this is what you should do because this is what allows you to get that discovery queue kick so that then you can get pushed more from like once the game actually comes out, from the discovery queue and actual people who may still see your game for the first time on Steam, not through YouTube marketing or something else. So do that. If you don't get those 10 reviews, yeah, your game is never gonna go anywhere. I think we have to be honest there. If you don't get it in like the first week on launch, basically it's never going to get any sales, any visibility, anything like that anymore. And then the last thing I just have to say is like mindset. This video is a lot about the mindset because these are emotionally tough things. Going into this, spending a year plus on a game and knowing that you're not going to get a positive return on investment for it. You may not even break $1,000, not even $100 maybe if you really have unfortunate luck or bad marketing. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons why you may only have like 200 wishlists at launch. And I think that is something that is going to kind of dim your hope and your love for game dev. And that's all right. I think that's something, it's better to do this than honestly what we did with Forge Industry, where once again, Forge Industry 2,500 wishlists when we went into it, like when we were gearing up for launch. And as long as your game isn't released yet, you can still have that hope. You can still have that, but what if there is a chance approach where I remember this, like last 2 days before we released the game, me and Thomas, we were talking of like, oh, what if this is the game? We can quit our job, like we can walk into the office next week on Monday and be like, hey, here's my resignation. I'm gonna be a full-time game developer now. The moment you press that release button, that's when that delusion stops. That's when reality hits, and that is going to hit you like a dump truck. I remember this very vividly still. We were like super hyped. We pressed that launch button for Forge Industry and we got like 15 sales. In the first day, it was bad. We didn't get those 10 reviews because back then I didn't know that yet. The game was dead. I think we made in total first launch week like $600 or something. I made a video about how much we earned. I think the total was like 1,900 gross after 2-3 weeks or something. It was pretty bad. It was miserable. I'll tell you that. And there were a lot of problems, like our fault as well. But basically, this kills all the hope you had, basically. Once the game is out, it's out. There's no going back. There's no take backsies. You have to deal with this now. And like I said, it's gonna suck. The first few days, probably you'll have a bunch of post-launch support to do. But after that, really, I strongly encourage you, take a break from game dev. Especially if it goes bad, like take a week off or something. Just to regroup, because it's also so dangerous. You're going to refresh that, like, how many copies have I sold? Every 5 minutes. Even though Steam only updates like once an hour, you're still going to be refreshing. I can guarantee you that, because you've had so much riding on this project. Don't kid yourself. You're going to be glued to the numbers, glued to the stats otherwise, where it's not healthy. It's going to crush you. It's really one of the most miserable parts of game development. It's not running into Unity issues or whatever. No, it's going to be figuring out that nobody wants to buy your game. And that all of the time and effort and all of the goodwill you put into the game to make it as good as you can didn't really matter in the long term. But don't completely throw away game dev. Look at, okay, where did it go wrong? Like in the case of my virtual friend, it's like, okay, where did it go wrong? We made a desktop bet, for God's sake. Like, how do you market this? Like, I think those are games that you market in a different way. Maybe we should have taken more to Reddit earlier on. Maybe we should have joined more fests. Like, we were too late, unfortunately, for joining the Idler Fest. Luckily, we still got Steam Next Fest. There's a lot of things we can realize from that and learn for our future games. Like, what did I learn? Like, hey, one, I can make pretty like good feeling small applications and like games and all of that, but I need to be honest in that like certain styles of games are less marketable than others, or are different styles of marketing than others, and all of that. This is not supposed to be like a whole retrospective on my virtual friend, because the game hasn't come out yet as I'm saying this. I'll link it down below if you want to see. Maybe it didn't go as dramatic as I expected. Maybe it is like actually that Hail Mary and I can, well, not really hand in my resignation because I'm a game developer. This is what I do. But like, we have more financial stability. I don't know. My guess right now is that it's not going to be a massive hit. But one thing that you still have to do is, like I said, that game updates and patches. Like, usually you'll get someone to buy your game, and you'll get like one community post that's like, hey, these are some of the bugs I have, or if it's worse, you get a negative review with like, these are all of the bugs I have. In which case, you still want to solve them. I think you should still do everything in your capacity for those few people who did buy the game to give them a good final experience. Like, wrap it up. Don't add new content, probably. It doesn't make sense if 3 people bought the game, but make sure that at least the bugs that you know of, the bugs that you get through Unity Analytics, for example, or another kind of like analytics service, solve them. Have a final product that you can look back on and be like, yeah, this was my first game and it was rough, but I still am pretty proud of it. And I think that is an important one as well. And there's nothing really much else you can do here. Don't bother with like console porting and all of that. I don't think there's any return on investment with those things. The best thing you can do is lick your wounds and figure out, how do we move on from here? Do we go and like, after you've made like this super elaborate narrative game that nobody cared about, do you just go and be like, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna make Playway style simulators? Maybe that's a takeaway for you if you're like, okay, actually we need to make money at some point. Or maybe it's something like, hey, I can see where I went wrong, the art style or the initial marketing, or maybe it was just the fact that you didn't market it at all, or you got some positive result from those emails you sent in the last 3 weeks and you just realized that if I had done more, you can take that into the next game's development and keep those things in mind. I think you shouldn't kid yourself that the first game you're gonna make is going to be your magnum opus, the best game you'll ever make, and you never can make anything better. It would be nice if that first game that you make does actually have a positive return on investment and you do actually make money back on it, even just looking at the Steam credit and maybe some other smaller aspects such as the assets that you bought. But I think it can only go up from here because you're gonna learn so much more from this release that I've talked about before as well, where so many things you just didn't know, like how Steam works, how your players will work and all of that. There's a lot you can learn from this release. Don't get stuck on the past. Just make sure that your next games are gonna be better, and hopefully this shouldn't happen anymore. So that's all I really had to say. I just wanted to make this video for those people who released games with, you know, a few hundred wish lists, never passed the 10 reviews, because I feel you. I understand your pain. I was there as well. And if you go through this alone and you didn't know that this was gonna happen, it sucks. There's no other way to say this. So I just wanted you to know that, and there are some things that you can keep in mind. Apart from that, if you're new here, we're game developers. We've made our own games. We've launched our own games. And we talk about the things that we've learned from doing that. What are the things we've learned along the way from making our own games? And we just want to share those lessons with you. So if that's something that you're interested in, head down below and subscribe. We upload 2 videos every week talking about those things. So I think there's a lot of value in there for you. That's all I had to say. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!